Native Americans cultivated superfruits for thousands of years that laughed at diseases, thrived without fertilizers, and delivered nutrition that makes GMOs look pathetic. Today, mentioning their names gets you labeled a conspiracy theorist. What explosive secret do these 15 banned fruits hold that big agriculture will do anything to keep buried? You know that creamy tropical fruit you pay $5 for at Whole Foods? Well, North America had something better all along. The pawpaw makes your fancy imported mangoes look like amateur hour. Here's the kicker. This thing grew wild across the eastern United States for thousands of years. Native Americans didn't need fancy greenhouses or trucks hauling fruit from Ecuador. They just walked into the forest and grabbed nature's custard cup right off the tree. But here's where it gets interesting. Each pawpaw packs 2.5 grams of protein. That's more than most fruits even dream about having. Your apple, practically a sugar water balloon by comparison. And get this, pawpaws laugh at droughts. While California farmers panic about water shortages, these bad boys just keep producing in temperate forests without breaking a sweat. No pesticides needed either. Makes you wonder why we're not growing these instead of shipping bananas from 3,000 miles away, right? The texture? Think banana meets mango with a PhD in deliciousness. Plus, they're loaded with vitamins A and C. So why don't you see pawpaws in every grocery store? Well, there's one tiny problem that changed everything. But before we get to that agricultural conspiracy, let's talk about another forgotten powerhouse that buffalo used to fight over. Now, buffalo berries, these little red gems, were the tough guys of the fruit world. While your grocery store strawberries throw a tantrum if the weather gets slightly chilly, buffalo berries laugh in the face of blizzards. They're like that neighbor who still mows his lawn in a snowstorm. Plains tribes knew something we forgot. These berries packed more punch than a heavyweight boxer's glove. We're talking antioxidant levels that make blueberries look like amateurs at their own game. But here's the kicker. Buffalo berry shrubs grow where other plants give up and go home. Poor soil? No problem. Harsh winds that would make a hurricane jealous? Bring it on. These shrubs are basically the Navy SEALs of the plant kingdom. The berries themselves taste like nature's version of a sweet and sour candy, just without all the artificial junk. Indigenous peoples turned them into jams that could outlast winter and still taste incredible come spring. So why don't we see buffalo berries at the farmer's market? Simple. Big agriculture decided that uniform, pretty strawberries were easier to sell than these hardy survivors. It's like choosing a sports car over a tank. Looks nice until you hit rough terrain. Well, speaking of survivors, wait until you hear about chokecherries. Chokecherries might sound intimidating, but don't let the name fool you. These little purple powerhouses were absolutely everywhere in Native American diets, and for good reason. Picture this. While your fancy grocery store cherries throw a tantrum if the weather gets slightly rough, chokecherries just shrug and keep growing. From Canada all the way down to New Mexico, these survivors adapt like that one friend who's comfortable at every party. The Lakota had it right when they made chokecherries the star of their winter survival food. One cup packs more anthocyanins than a supplement bottle. Those are the compounds that fight inflammation better than your grandmother's heating pad. But here's where it gets interesting. That distinctive bittersweet taste, that's not a bug, it's a feature. Traditional preserves and jellies made from chokecherries had layers of flavor that made store-bought jam taste like sugar water with food coloring. These tough little fruits laughed at drought while commercial cherries needed constant babying. They thrived in poor soil conditions that would send a Bing cherry tree into therapy. So what happened? Simple economics, really. Sweet sells easier than complex flavor profiles. Industrial agriculture wanted fruits that shipped well and lasted forever on shelves. Speaking of fruits that got pushed aside for convenience, wait until you hear about Oregon grapes. Oregon grapes don't look like grapes at all. They're actually clusters of small dark blue berries that grow on spiky bushes. But here's what big agriculture doesn't want you to know. These little guys pack more medicinal punch than a pharmacy aisle. Pacific Northwest tribes figured this out centuries ago. They used every part of the plant, especially the bright yellow bark. Why? Because it contains berberine, a compound so powerful that modern medicine is finally catching up to what Native Americans knew all along. The berries themselves taste like someone mixed cranberries with a pickle. Not exactly dessert material, but that sourness signals serious health benefits. We're talking natural antibiotics and anti-inflammatory effects that could give aspirin a run for its money. These tough little bushes laugh at poor soil conditions. While your pampered garden tomatoes need fertilizer and daily attention, Oregon grapes thrive in rocky, nutrient-poor dirt that would make other plants wave the white flag. Industrial farming took one look at the tiny berry size and puckering tartness and said, nope, pass. They wanted bigger, sweeter, easier to harvest. Makes sense from a profit standpoint, right? Well, there's another native fruit that industrial agriculture really didn't want to deal with. The huckleberry might just be nature's answer to what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. While your grocery store blueberries need perfect conditions and constant babying, huckleberries laugh at Rocky Mountain blizzards like they're getting a spa treatment. Native American tribes called them the mountain candy for good reason. These purple powerhouses pack more iron than Popeye's spinach and enough vitamins to make your multivitamin jealous. The flavor? Well, imagine if a blueberry went to graduate school and came back with a PhD in taste. But here's where it gets interesting. Bears will travel miles just to gorge on these things. When a 1,000-pound grizzly makes huckleberries his priority, you know you're dealing with something special. It's like having nature's own food critic give a 5-star review. The deep purple color wasn't just pretty to look at either. Tribal cultures saw it as a symbol of abundance and fertility. Smart folks, considering 1 cup delivers more antioxidants than most people get in a week. Yet big agriculture threw huckleberries under the bus faster than a teenager deletes their browser history. Why? Cultivated blueberries were easier to mass produce and ship. Never mind that huckleberries could survive conditions that would make commercial berries wave the white flag. Speaking of fruits that got the agricultural cold shoulder, elderberries weren't just growing wild in floodplains by accident. They were thriving there because they're basically the Navy SEALs of the fruit world. While other plants were drowning in soggy soil, elderberries were building their reputation as nature's pharmacy. Your grandmother probably knew this secret. She'd boil elderberries into syrup every fall, creating what modern science now calls one of the most potent immune boosters on Earth. 1 cup delivers 40% of your daily vitamin C needs. That's like having a vitamin pill that actually tastes good. But here's where it gets interesting. Native American healers didn't just use elderberries for colds. They created elaborate ceremonies around harvest time, believing the deep purple berries could ward off both evil spirits and winter illness. Turns out they weren't being superstitious. They were being scientific. The anthocyanins that give elderberries their dark color are the same compounds that make them so effective against flu viruses. Makes sense, right? Yet industrial agriculture completely ignored this powerhouse. Why? Because grapes were easier to mass produce and had better profit margins. While we were busy perfecting seedless grapes, we abandoned a fruit that could naturally boost immunity without any chemicals or genetic modification. Speaking of abandoned treasures, wait until you discover what happened to the mysterious maypop. Native American tribes called the maypop sacred for good reason. This wasn't your average berry hiding in the woods. The maypop, also known as wild passion flower, produces some of the most intricate blooms you've ever seen. We're talking flowers so complex they look like nature hired a mathematician and an artist to collaborate. Each bloom has layered petals, colorful filaments, and a design so detailed that early missionaries thought it told the story of the crucifixion. But here's what really matters. While modern farmers pump their crops full of anxiety-inducing chemicals, the maypop naturally produces compounds that do the exact opposite. This little fruit contains chrysin and vitexin, fancy names for nature's chill pills. Indigenous healers knew this secret centuries before anyone invented Xanax. They'd brew maypop tea to calm nerves and help people sleep better than a baby after Thanksgiving dinner. The fruit itself? Think passion fruit's hardy cousin who went to survival school, sweet, tangy, and packed with vitamins, but tough enough to grow wild across the southeast without babysitting. Then, big agriculture showed up with their focus groups and market research. Turns out, flowers that look like religious art don't photograph well on cereal boxes. They wanted something simpler, sweeter, more profitable. What happened to this natural anxiety fighter reveals something disturbing about how we choose our food. The serviceberry was like that reliable friend who shows up when everyone else bails. Native Americans called it by dozens of names, but they all meant the same thing: dependable nutrition when you needed it most. This little purple powerhouse grows in places that would make a commercial apple tree throw in the towel. Scrublands, rocky hillsides, areas where the soil looks like it's given up on life. Yet there it stands, producing berries packed with more fiber than your morning cereal and enough antioxidants to make a supplement company jealous. But here's where it gets interesting. Traditional societies didn't waste a single part. The berries went into pemmican, basically the original energy bar that could last months without refrigeration. The bark became medicine. The wood turned into arrows and tools. Makes sense, right? Why wouldn't modern agriculture embrace something so versatile? Well, because serviceberries commit the ultimate agricultural sin. They're not efficient enough for industrial farming. They produce smaller yields than those perfectly uniform orchard fruits we see in grocery stores. Big agriculture looked at this survivor and said, "Thanks, but we'll stick with our monoculture orchards that require constant babying." The irony? While we pump resources into fragile crops, this forgotten fruit keeps thriving in conditions that would destroy them. Speaking of forgotten survivors, let me tell you about a berry that sounds like it should be served at a fancy Italian restaurant, but it's actually tougher than your grandmother's pot roast. Manzanita berries were the secret weapon of California tribes for thousands of years. These little red gems grow on twisted, gnarly shrubs that look like they've been doing yoga for decades. And here's the kicker: they absolutely love drought conditions. While your neighbor's tomatoes are wilting faster than a bad pickup line, manzanita bushes are thriving in bone-dry soil. The berries pack more probiotics than those expensive yogurt drinks your doctor keeps recommending. Native Americans knew this centuries before anyone invented the word microbiome. They'd grind these berries into flour, make refreshing drinks, and brew medicinal teas from the bark. But here's where it gets interesting. These plants are literally fireproof. Well, almost. Their thick bark protects them from wildfires, and they actually sprout back stronger after getting scorched. It's like nature's version of a phoenix, but crunchier. So why don't we see manzanita berries at the grocery store? Simple. Big agriculture fell head over heels for water-hungry crops that need constant babying. They wanted fruits that looked pretty on shelves, not ones that could survive an apocalypse. Speaking of survivors, wait until you hear about a plum that grows where most fruits fear to tread. The Indian plum holds secrets that modern agriculture desperately wants to bury. Why? Because this Pacific Northwest native makes conventional plums look like pampered houseplants. Picture your grandpa's old Buick, tough, reliable, and built to last forever. That's Indian plum for you. While commercial plums need their weekly spa treatments of pesticides and fertilizers, Indian plums just shrug and keep growing in moist forest floors without any human babying. Native American communities treated this fruit like nature's pharmacy. Got stomach troubles? Indian plum to the rescue. Unlike most fruits that'll pucker your face with acidity, this little rebel is naturally alkaline, rarer than finding a teenager who enjoys doing chores. But here's where it gets interesting. The tree doesn't just feed you, it talks to you. Early spring blooms served as nature's calendar, telling indigenous peoples exactly when winter was packing its bags. Makes sense, right? Then commercial agriculture waltzed in with their improved plums. Bigger, sweeter, more profitable. They convinced everyone that natural resilience was old-fashioned nonsense. The result? We traded a fruit that could survive anything for varieties that need more maintenance than a vintage sports car. Well, the Indian plum's coastal cousin has an even wilder story about surviving where nothing else can. Ever tried growing anything in pure sand? Your tomatoes would laugh at you and die within a week. But here's where the wild beach plum shows off like a botanical superhero. This little fighter thrives along the eastern seaboard in conditions that would make a cactus nervous. Picture your grandmother's face when she tastes something really sour. That's the wild beach plum experience. But don't let that tartness fool you into thinking it's just nature's practical joke. These babies pack more minerals than a vitamin store, delivering nutrients you won't find in your average grocery store fruit. The salt spray that kills most plants? Beach plums use it like expensive spa treatment. When that would topple apple trees, they bend and keep growing. Native Americans called them hardy survivors, for good reason. They're basically the Navy SEALs of the fruit world. Here's the kicker. While commercial farmers were busy babying their delicate orchard plums with irrigation systems and protective barriers, beach plums were out there proving that toughness beats pampering every time. Makes sense, right? But here's what really gets interesting. The industrial agriculture machine completely ignored these mineral powerhouses because they're harder to harvest than regular plums. Well, there's another native fruit that faced an even stranger fate. Picture a berry so tough it laughs at mountain weather while your grandmother's apple tree throws a tantrum over a light frost. That's the cut-leaf birchberry for you. These delicate yellow gems grow where most fruits would pack their bags and head south. We're talking high altitudes, where the air is thin and the winters are meaner than a tax auditor. But here's the kicker. Native Americans called them birdberries because they noticed something fascinating. Birds would fly miles out of their way just to feast on these tiny powerhouses. Makes sense, right? Animals aren't stupid. They instinctively know what's good for them. The berries might look fragile, but they're packed with infection-fighting nutrients that would make your multivitamin jealous. Traditional healers crush them into soothing balms that work better than anything you'll find at the pharmacy today. Well, that's what the oral histories tell us anyway. But here's where it gets frustrating. Big agriculture took one look at the limited fruiting season and said, nope, too much work. They wanted fruits that produced year-round profits, not seasonal treasures that required patience. So while you're buying imported berries shipped thousands of miles, these natural survivors sit forgotten in the mountains. Speaking of forgotten mountain treasures, wait until you hear about what grows in our deserts. Picture a cactus that literally saves lives in the desert, while your grocery store fruits need air conditioning to survive shipping. That's the prickly pear for you, nature's ultimate survival expert disguised as a spiky menace. Desert tribes knew something we've completely forgotten. When water was scarce and food even scarcer, they turned to this thorny miracle worker. The fruit and pads both contain enough moisture to keep you hydrated when the nearest water source is miles away. It's like having a portable oasis that grows itself. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern nutritionists are finally catching up to what indigenous peoples knew centuries ago. These ruby red fruits pack more fiber than your morning cereal and enough antioxidants to make blueberries jealous. They actually help reduce inflammation better than most prescription alternatives. The irony? Arizona made it their state flower, yet most Americans couldn't identify one if it bit them. Well, technically it would poke them, but you get the idea. Commercial agriculture completely ignored prickly pear because harvesting requires skill and patience. Much easier to grow apples that don't fight back, right? Then there's another plant that Plains tribes treasured so much they built entire trade networks around it, but this one hides underground. You know what's funny about modern agriculture? They'll spend millions developing the perfect potato while completely ignoring a bulb that's been feeding people for thousands of years. Makes sense, right? Meet the camas, those gorgeous blue flowers that turn entire meadows into what looks like nature's own carpet. But here's the kicker. Those pretty blooms are just the advertisement for the real treasure buried underground. Native tribes across the Pacific Northwest treated camas bulbs like we treat potatoes today. Except these little powerhouses packed way more nutrition than anything you'll find in your grocery store. We're talking serious carbohydrates, essential vitamins, and enough energy to fuel long hunting trips. The harvesting was like a community festival. Entire families would head to the camas prairies with their digging sticks, turning bulb gathering into a social event. Think of it as the original farmer's market, except everyone was both the farmer and the customer. Well, here's where things get ridiculous. These hardy perennials thrive in conditions that would make regular crops throw in the towel. No irrigation systems, no fancy fertilizers, just pure, stubborn survival instinct. But industrial farming had other plans. Why mess with seasonal bulb harvesting when you can plant acres of uniform potatoes? The problem is we traded resilience for convenience. Speaking of trading away nutritional gold mines, wait until you hear about the final fruit that could survive literally anywhere. You know what survives where other plants would basically give up and die? The yucca fruit. This spiky desert warrior thrives in conditions that would make a cactus sweat. If cacti could sweat, that is. Southwestern tribes didn't just stumble upon this desert treasure. They built entire food systems around it. The yucca fruit became their insurance policy against harsh seasons when regular crops failed miserably. But here's where it gets interesting. Those same compounds that help yucca survive blazing heat and zero rainfall, they create natural soaps. Native Americans figured this out centuries before we started buying expensive shampoos that promise natural ingredients. The saponins in yucca fruit literally foam up when mixed with water. Talk about nature's original 2-in-1 formula. Food and hygiene rolled into one tough package. And the nutritional punch, well, let's just say modern energy bars wish they packed this kind of natural vitality. High fiber, essential minerals, and compounds that actually help your body handle stress better. Yet, big agriculture took one look at this desert survivor and basically said, too complicated. Why bother with a plant that requires zero irrigation when you can grow crops that need constant babying instead? Makes perfect sense, right? Well, if you're trying to create dependency rather than sustainability, it does.